The city of Novalis thrived under the watchful eyes of its inhabitants, both human and alien. Once a hub of human innovation, Novalis had become an interstellar crossroads, teeming with alien ambassadors, traders, and scientists. The Arisari, with their sleek technology and inscrutable motives, had taken a prominent role in Earth's transformation. They arrived a decade earlier, their starships cutting through the atmosphere with breathtaking elegance, offering advancements in exchange for cooperation. But for Dara Solis, the city's bustling streets and alien visitors were more a nuisance than a marvel. She preferred the quiet of the Arboretum Dome, a sprawling botanical sanctuary where humanity's vanishing flora were preserved. As a botanist, Dara spent hours tending to the plants, ensuring their survival against encroaching pollution and neglect. It was her haven, a rare corner of Earth untouched by alien interference, or so she thought. On a crisp evening, Dara found herself heading to the Arboretum, the dome's glass exterior gleaming under the city's neon glow. She pushed open the heavy door, her boots echoing against the polished floor. The familiar scent of damp soil and blooming orchids greeted her, a soothing balm for her frayed nerves. She wasn't expecting company. "You're trespassing," came a voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the tranquility. Dara froze, her gaze darting toward the voice. Standing amidst the gardenias was an alien woman unlike any Dara had seen up close. She was tall, her presence regal and imposing, with silver hair cascading down her back like molten metal. Her violet eyes gleamed in the low light, dissecting Dara with a single look. Her skin shimmered faintly, an iridescent quality unique to the Arisari. Dara recognized her immediately. Ilyra Velis, a high-ranking Arisari diplomat known for her icy demeanor and ruthless efficiency. Stories about Ilyra were whispered across Novalis, tales of how she had brokered deals that left Earth's leaders scrambling, her cunning mind outmatching even the sharpest negotiators. But Dara wasn't intimidated. "And you are?" Dara asked, arching an eyebrow. Ilyra's gaze narrowed, as if the question itself was an affront. "I am Ilyra Velis of the Arisari High Command. This is my sanctuary. Leave." Dara crossed her arms, a defiant smirk tugging at her lips. "Didn't see your name on the door?" For a moment, Ilyra's perfect composure faltered, her expression flickering between annoyance and amusement. "Humans," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "Always so irreverent." "Arisari," Dara shot back, "always so entitled." The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken challenges. Dara didn't flinch under Ilyra's piercing gaze even as the alien took a step closer, her movements fluid and deliberate. "Why are you here?" Ilyra asked, her voice softer, but no less commanding. Dara shrugged. "Because I like this place, and because I don't care who you are. We're all just people at the end of the day." Ilyra stared at her, the statement hanging in the air like a challenge. The alien's violet eyes seemed to search for something in Dara's expression, as if trying to decipher a language she couldn't understand. Finally, Ilyra stepped back, her posture as composed as ever. "Stay out of my way, human," she said, turning on her heel. "Gladly," Dara muttered, though her eyes lingered on Ilyra's retreating figure. The encounter left Dara restless. She spent the following days tending to her plants, her mind wandering back to the alien diplomat with the piercing gaze. There was something about Ilyra, something that stirred equal parts frustration and curiosity. Dara found herself returning to the Arboretum more frequently, half hoping to see her again. Her wish was granted one evening. As Dara adjusted the irrigation system for the tropical section, she heard the familiar sound of soft footsteps. She turned to find Ilyra standing at the entrance, her silver hair catching the light like a halo. "Back so soon?" Dara quipped, brushing her hands on her work apron. Ilyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she moved closer, her gaze sweeping over the plants with an almost imperceptible softness. "You care for these plants," she said, her tone neutral. Dara nodded. "Someone has to. They're part of what's left of Earth." Ilyra's eyes flicked to Dara, a faint crease forming between her brows. Why does it matter? Your species seems intent on destroying this planet. Dara stiffened, her jaw tightening. Not all of us, she said. Some of us are trying to make things better. Ilyra tilted her head, studying Dara with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. And you believe these plants are worth saving? Yes, Dara said firmly. They're part of who we are. Just like you have your shimmering starships and violet eyes, we have this. It's life. The alien's expression softened just for a moment. Life, she repeated as if testing the word. Your perspective is unusual. Dara smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. For the first time, a faint smile tugged at Ilyra's lips, so fleeting Dara almost missed it. The moment passed quickly, and Ilyra's composure returned, but the interaction left a mark. From that day on, their encounters became more frequent. Ilyra would appear in the arboretum, sometimes silently observing, other times engaging in brief, sharp conversations with Dara. Each interaction was a dance of wit and will, neither willing to yield but both undeniably drawn to the other. Late one evening, as the arboretum's lights dimmed to simulate twilight, Dara found Ilyra standing in the orchid section, her expression uncharacteristically contemplative. You look lost, Dara said, approaching her. Ilyra glanced at her, a hint of vulnerability in her violet eyes. I do not get lost. Dara chuckled softly. Everyone gets lost sometimes. Ilyra's gaze lingered on Dara, her usually guarded expression faltering. Why do you speak to me this way? Without fear? Because you're not untouchable, Dara said simply. You're just you. For a moment, Ilyra looked as though she might argue, but then she smiled, a real, genuine smile that took Dara's breath away. It was the kind of smile that could topple walls, a glimpse of something deeply human in someone so alien. In that moment, Dara realized she was in trouble. Because whatever Ilyra Velis was, untouchable or not, she was no longer just an alien, diplomat. She was something much more complicated and much more dangerous. Dara returned to the arboretum the following day, her thoughts a tangled mess of curiosity and apprehension. She couldn't shake the image of Ilyra's fleeting smile or the way her violet eyes had softened. There was a fragility there, hidden beneath, layers of pride and authority, and it intrigued Dara in ways she wasn't ready to admit. When Dara arrived, Ilyra was already there, standing near the lotus pond. Her silver hair shimmered under the artificial sunlight, and her figure was as poised as ever. But there was something different about her demeanor, something softer, more contemplative. Don't you have important diplomatic things to do? Dara teased as she approached, breaking the silence. Ilyra turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Perhaps I find this place more tolerable than a room full of politicians. Dara smirked. High praise. Ilyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gestured to the pond. These plants, she said, her voice quieter than usual. Are they native to Earth? Dara nodded. Lotus flowers. They've been around for thousands of years. Some cultures consider them sacred, symbols of purity and resilience. Resilience, Ilyra repeated, as though testing the weight of the word. Even in the murkiest waters they bloom. Dara blinked, surprised by the poetic observation. Exactly. You're full of surprises, aren't you? Ilyra glanced at her, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. And you are remarkably bold for someone so small. Small? Dara scoffed, placing her hands on her hips. You know I'm average height. For a human, Ilyra said, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Dara rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her grin. Well, aren't you charming? Over the next few weeks, their encounters grew more frequent. What had started as terse, guarded exchanges gradually shifted into something resembling companionship. Ilyra seemed to relax in Dara's presence, her sharp edges softening, her wit less biting. Dara, in turn, found herself drawn to the alien in ways she couldn't explain. One evening, as they stood beneath the Arboretum's glowing canopy, Dara couldn't help but ask, "Why do you keep coming here?" Ilyra hesitated, her gaze fixed on the delicate petals of a nearby flower. "Because it is quiet, and because you speak to me as though I am not different." Dara frowned. "You're not that different." Ilyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "You are mistaken. My people see me as untouchable, and perhaps they are right. I am bound by duty, by expectations that leave no room for weakness." Dara stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "Everyone has weaknesses. It's what makes us real." Ilyra's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the distance between them seemed to shrink. "And what of you, Dara Solis? What are your weaknesses?" Dara hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "I guess I care too much about the planet, about people, even when it's not easy." Ilyra studied her, the intensity of her gaze making Dara's pulse quicken. "That is not a weakness, that is strength." Dara swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "Maybe, but it doesn't always feel that way." The first real crack in Ilyra's armor came during a late-night storm. The Arboretum's climate control systems had malfunctioned, and the once tranquil space was now a chaotic mess of heavy rain and erratic winds. Dara had rushed to save as many plants as she could, her clothes soaked through as she worked tirelessly to stabilize the fragile ecosystem. She didn't expect Ilyra to show up. The alien appeared suddenly, her flowing garments clinging to her frame as she stepped into the storm. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the roar of the wind. "Saving what I can," Dara shouted back, struggling to secure a tarp over a bed of orchids. "What does it look like?" Ilyra hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward to help. Together they worked in silence, their movements synchronized despite the chaos around them. When the storm finally subsided, they stood side by side, drenched and exhausted, but victorious. Dara looked up at Ilyra, her chest heaving. Not bad for someone who's supposed to be untouchable. Ilyra's expression softened, a hint of vulnerability flickering in her eyes. "Perhaps you are more persuasive than I anticipated." That night marked a turning point. Their bond deepened, the walls between them crumbling with each shared moment. Dara found herself opening up to Ilyra in ways she hadn't with anyone else, sharing stories of her childhood, her dreams, her fears. And Ilyra in turn revealed glimpses of her own struggles, the weight of her responsibilities, the loneliness of being revered but never truly seen. One evening, as they sat beneath the Arboretum's starry ceiling, Dara asked the question that had been nagging at her for weeks. "Why do your people call you untouchable?" Ilyra hesitated, her gaze distant. "Because to them, I am more than an individual. I am a symbol of strength, of perfection. To touch me is to defile that image." "That's ridiculous," Dara said, her voice tinged with anger. "You're not a statue. You're a person." Ilyra's eyes softened, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Your passion is admirable, Dara Solis, but it is not so simple." "It could be," Dara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you let it." Their eyes met, and the air between them grew heavy with unspoken emotions. Dara's heart raced as she leaned closer, the pull between them undeniable. But before their lips could meet, Ilyra pulled away, her expression conflicted. "I cannot," she said, her voice trembling. "Not yet." Dara nodded, her chest aching with unspoken longing. "I'll wait," she said softly, "as long as it takes." Ilyra didn't respond, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. For the first time, Dara saw not the untouchable diplomat, but a woman torn between duty and desire. And in that moment she knew their story was far from over. The days following Ilyra's near confession were a blur of tension and anticipation for Dara. The memory of their almost kiss lingered in her mind, like the tantalizing smell of rain on dry earth. Every glance, every touch that lingered too long only amplified the unspoken emotions between them. Ilyra, for her part, seemed to retreat further into her duties, avoiding prolonged contact whenever she could. Yet she always returned to the Arboretum, often under the pretense of quiet reflection, but Dara knew better. The alien princess was drawn to her as much as Dara was to Ilyra. One afternoon, Dara sat cross-legged on the cool grass, her fingers deftly pruning a stubborn fern. She hummed quietly, the tune light and playful, her thoughts far away. She didn't notice Ilyra approach until the alien spoke. "What is that sound?" Ilyra's voice cut through Dara's reverie, startling her. Dara looked up, her cheeks flushing. "It's just a song I remember from childhood." "It is pleasant," Ilyra admitted, her expression uncharacteristically soft. "Sing it again." Dara hesitated, then began to hum the melody once more. As she worked, Ilyra seated herself nearby, her usually rigid posture unusually relaxed. The sight made Dara's chest tighten with an unfamiliar mix of emotions, protectiveness, admiration, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. When Dara finished, Ilyra tilted her head. "Music seems important to your kind." "It's universal," Dara replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It can express what words can't, like joy, sadness, love." Ilyra's gaze sharpened. "Love?" Dara froze, realizing the vulnerability of her admission. She quickly turned back to the fern, her fingers suddenly fumbling with the shears. "Yeah, love." Ilyra leaned forward, her eyes searching Dara's face. "And how does one recognize this love?" Dara met her gaze, the weight of the question settling between them. "You just know," she said softly. "It's when you care about someone more than yourself. When being near them feels like home." The words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Ilyra didn't respond, but the way her eyes softened told Dara everything she needed to know. There was a crack in Ilyra's walls, a fissure through which the truth might seep. Later that evening, Dara found herself lying awake, her thoughts racing. The growing connection between her and Ilyra was undeniable, but it was also complicated. Ilyra wasn't just an alien. She was a leader, a figurehead for her people. Whatever they were building between them was dangerous, an act of rebellion against cultural norms and expectations. Yet Dara couldn't bring herself to pull away. There was something about Ilyra, something magnetic and irresistible. The way she carried herself with strength but allowed glimpses of vulnerability made Dara's heart ache. The Arboretum became their sanctuary. Each day they danced around the unspoken truth of their feelings, their conversations becoming more intimate and their silences more charged. It was in these quiet moments that Dara saw the real Ilyra, not the untouchable icon, but the woman underneath. One night, as they stood beneath the simulated stars, Dara finally broke the silence. "Ilyra, what do you want?" The question was simple, yet it carried the weight of the universe. Ilyra looked at her, her expression conflicted. "I do not know." Dara stepped closer, her voice steady. "I think you do. You're just afraid to admit it." Ilyra's gaze dropped, her usual confidence faltering. "If I were to admit it, what would it change? I am bound by duty. My people would never accept." She stopped, catching herself, before finishing the sentence. Dara's heart clenched. "Would never accept someone like me," she finished for her, her voice barely above a whisper. Ilyra looked up sharply, guilt flashing across her face. "That is not what I meant." "But it's true, isn't it?" Dara pressed, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "You think this, whatever this is, can't work because I'm human." Ilyra took a step closer, her voice firm but trembling. "You misunderstand me, Dara Solis. It is not your humanity I fear. It is what you make me feel." Dara's breath caught, her heart pounding. "And what do I make you feel?" There was a long pause, the air between them thick with tension. Finally, Ilyra spoke, her voice barely audible. "Alive." The admission hung between them like a fragile thread waiting to be pulled. Dara felt her resolve waver, her instincts urging her to close the distance between them. But Ilyra's next word stopped her in her tracks. But it cannot be, Ilyra said, her tone resigned. To act on these feelings would mean betraying everything I stand for. Dara's chest tightened with a mix of frustration and sorrow. And what about what you feel? Doesn't that matter? Ilyra's gaze hardened, her walls snapping back into place. It cannot matter. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Dara standing alone beneath the simulated stars. The following days were agonizing. Ilyra avoided the arboretum entirely, and Dara felt her absence like a physical ache. The sanctuary that had once felt alive and vibrant now seemed hollow and empty. Dara tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ilyra. The alien had managed to burrow her way into Dara's heart, leaving a void that nothing else could fill. It wasn't until a week later that Ilyra returned. She appeared suddenly, her expression unreadable as she approached Dara. Before Dara could speak, Ilyra held up a hand. I have made my decision, she said, her voice steady but strained. I cannot deny what I feel for you, Dara Solis. But if we are to pursue this, we must be prepared for the consequences. Dara's heart skipped a beat, hope flaring to life within her. Ilyra, Ilyra silenced her with a gentle touch to her lips. Do not speak. Not yet. Just let me try. And then, before Dara could process what was happening, Ilyra leaned in and kissed her. The world seemed to still as their lips met, the kiss tender yet filled with unspoken emotion. It was as if the universe had aligned in that moment, erasing all doubt and fear. When they finally pulled apart, Ilyra rested her forehead against Dara's, her voice a whisper. You make me forget everything else, she said. But this is only the beginning. Dara smiled, her heart swelling with joy. Then let's begin. The days following their kiss were a whirlwind of emotions, stolen glances and whispered confessions. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ilyra allowed herself to embrace the vulnerability she had spent her life shielding from the world. Dara in turn felt the weight of her presence intensify, the connection between them growing like an uncontainable wildfire. But it wasn't without its complications. Their secret was a fragile thing, hanging by a thread that could snap under the slightest scrutiny. The Arboretum, once a sanctuary of peace, now carried an undercurrent of tension. Every rustle of leaves, every faint sound from the corridors beyond, reminded them of the precariousness of their situation. One evening, as they sat together beneath the massive canopy of an ancient earth tree replica, Ilyra broke the silence. This cannot remain hidden forever. Dara glanced at her, startled by the sudden gravity in her voice. What do you mean? I mean, Ilyra continued, her gaze fixed on the simulated stars above, that sooner or later we will be discovered. And when that happens, there will be consequences. Dara frowned, her chest tightening. Why does it have to be that way? Can't we just be? Ilyra looked at her, her expression softening. In an ideal world, perhaps, but we do not live in an ideal world. My people are not forgiving. They see humans as unpredictable, impulsive, and dangerous. Dara bit her lip, the words cutting deeper than she expected. Do you believe that too? No. Ilyra's response was immediate, her tone firm. You have shown me otherwise, but my belief alone will not sway centuries of prejudice. Then we fight it, Dara said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Together. The determination in her tone made Ilyra pause, her eyes searching Dara's face. You do not understand what you are saying. This is not a battle that can be won with words alone. My people, my council, will see our connection as a betrayal of everything we stand for. Dara reached out, taking Ilyra's hand in hers. I understand more than you think. I know it won't be easy, but I also know that what we have is worth it. For a moment, Ilyra said nothing, her gaze fixed on their entwined hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. You are braver than anyone I have ever known. The next day, Their precarious peace was shattered. A high-ranking member of the Coalition Council arrived unannounced, his presence sending ripples of unease through the base. Councillor Vycross was a towering figure, his demeanor as cold and unyielding as the steel-blue scales that adorned his body. He wasted no time making his presence felt, summoning Ilyra to a private meeting within hours of his arrival. Dara watched, from a distance as Ilyra disappeared into the meeting chamber, her back straight and her expression carefully composed. The hours dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity. By the time Ilyra emerged, her expression was unreadable, her usual grace marred by an underlying tension. "What happened?" Dara asked as soon as they were alone. Ilyra shook her head, her jaw tight. "Vycross suspects something, he claims, to be here on routine business, but I believe his true purpose is to observe." "Observe what?" "Us." The single word was heavy with implication. "If he discovers the truth, he will use it against me. And against you." Dara felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Then we'll have to be careful." Ilyra's eyes met hers, the weight of their situation clear in her gaze. Careful may not be enough. That night, as Dara lay awake in her quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out. The thought of being separated from Ilyra was unbearable, but the risks were mounting. Vycross's presence was a ticking clock, and every moment he remained on the base brought them closer to discovery. A sudden noise outside her door pulled Dara from her thoughts. She sat up, her heart pounding as she listened. The sound came again, a faint, deliberate tap. Cautiously, she approached the door and opened it to find Ilyra standing there, her expression taut with urgency. "We need to talk," Ilyra said, her voice low. Dara stepped aside, allowing her in. "What's going on?" "I've made a decision," Ilyra said, her eyes dark with determination. "We cannot stay here." Dara blinked, stunned. "What do you mean? Where would we go?" "There is a transport leaving for a neutral zone in 2 days," Ilyra explained. "If we can reach it undetected, we can escape." Dara's heart raced. "Escape? You're talking about leaving everything behind." Ilyra nodded. "Yes. It is the only way to protect you, and us. Vycross will not stop until he finds proof of our relationship. If he does, it will mean the end for both of us." Dara hesitated, her mind racing. The idea of leaving the base, of abandoning the life she had built, was daunting, but the thought of losing Ilyra was even more terrifying. "I'll go with you," she said finally, her voice steady. "Whatever it takes." A flicker of relief crossed Ilyra's face. "Thank you." The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation and subterfuge. Ilyra used her status to secure access to restricted areas, while Dara gathered supplies and forged clearance documents. The tension was palpable, every moment spent looking over their shoulders, every interaction laced with the fear of discovery. On the night of their departure, they met in the Arboretum one last time. The space, which had once been their sanctuary, now felt like a farewell. "Are you ready?" Ilyra asked, her voice soft but resolute. Dara nodded, her heart pounding. "As ready as I'll ever be." Ilyra stepped closer, her gaze intense. "No matter what happens, know that you are the bravest soul I have ever known." Before Dara could respond, Ilyra pulled her into a kiss, their emotions colliding in a whirlwind of passion and desperation. It was a promise, a vow to face whatever came next together. As they pulled apart, Dara took a deep breath. "Let's go." And with that, they stepped into the unknown, their bond unbreakable as they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The transport bay hummed with subdued activity. Cargo loaders maneuvered with calculated precision, and the occasional clatter of crates echoed through the cavernous space. Dara and Ilyra blended into the shadows, their steps light, their movements deliberate. Every moment felt stretched thin, fraught with the weight of what they were about to attempt. The plan was simple in concept but perilous in execution, slip aboard the neutral zone transport undetected and leave behind the base, and their old lives forever. It was a gamble, one that hinged on the hope that Ilyra's forged credentials would hold up under scrutiny. As they approached the loading ramp, Ilyra held up a hand, signaling for Dara to pause. "Wait here," she whispered. "I'll go first." Dara's heart pounded as she watched Ilyra step into the open, her every movement radiating the poise and authority that had once made her untouchable. A uniformed coalition officer glanced at her credentials and waved her through without question. Ilyra turned, her gaze locking with Dara's, and gave the faintest nod. Dara swallowed hard and followed, doing her best to project the same confidence. The officer barely glanced at her as she passed, and for a fleeting moment, Dara allowed herself to hope. Inside the transport, the tension did not abate. The cargo hold was dimly lit, its metallic walls cold and unwelcoming. They found a secluded corner surrounded by towering crates marked with alien script, and settled in to wait for departure. "This feels too easy," Dara murmured, her voice low. Ilyra gave a small humorless smile. "Do not tempt fate, we are not safe yet." As if on cue, the transport's intercom crackled to life and a clipped voice announced, "All personnel, prepare for departure. Security sweep commencing." Dara stiffened. "Security sweep?" "It is standard protocol," Ilyra said, though her expression betrayed her unease. "They will check the ship for stowaways or unauthorized personnel." Panic rose in Dara's chest, but Ilyra placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "Stay calm. We will get through this." The sound of footsteps grew louder as the security team moved through the cargo hold. Dara's pulse raced, every fiber of her being screaming to run, but Ilyra's steady presence kept her grounded. When the footsteps stopped just outside their hiding spot, Dara held her breath. A moment later, a metallic clang echoed through the hold as one of the crates was pried open. "This one's clear," a gruff voice said. The footsteps resumed, and Dara dared to exhale, but the reprieve was short-lived. A sharp, authoritative voice cut through the air. "Halt!" Dara's blood ran cold. She turned to see a figure stepping into view, a coalition officer flanked by 2 armed guards. Behind them stood Councillor Ilyra, his piercing gaze fixed on Ilyra. "Well, well," Ilyra said, his tone dripping with disdain. "I knew you were hiding something, Councillor Ilyra. But this is beyond even my expectations." Ilyra stepped forward, placing herself between Dara and the guards. "Ilyra," she said coolly, "what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning?" Ilyra sneered. "The meaning is that you have betrayed the coalition and consorted with a human. Do you have any idea what you have done?" "I have done nothing but follow my heart," Ilyra said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "You may see that as a betrayal, but I see it as liberation." Ilyra's expression darkened. "Liberation? You speak of liberation, while dragging our people's name through the mud?" "Enough," Ilyra said, her tone sharp. "You may judge me as you will, but Dara has done nothing wrong. Let her go." Ilyra laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Do you truly believe I would allow such an insult to go unpunished?" "No, Ilyra. You will both answer for this." In that moment, Dara acted. With a swift movement, she grabbed a metal rod from a nearby crate and swung it at the nearest guard. The blow landed with a satisfying thud, and the guard crumpled to the ground. The chaos that followed was a blur. Ilyra moved with lightning speed, disarming the second guard and using his weapon to create a barrier of energy between them and Ilyra. "Run!" Ilyra shouted, grabbing Dara's hand and pulling her toward the ship's interior. They sprinted through the narrow corridors, the sound of alarms and shouting voices echoing behind them. Dara's lungs burned, her legs threatening to give out, but she refused to slow down. Finally, they reached the cockpit. Ilyra sealed the door behind them and turned to the controls. "Can you fly this?" Dara nodded, her hands already moving over the unfamiliar interface. "I'll figure it out." The ship shuddered as it lifted off, the engines roaring to life. Dara's fingers flew over the controls, her heart pounding as they broke free of the base's gravitational field and soared into the stars. As the ship stabilized, Dara slumped back in her seat, her chest heaving. Did we make it? Ilyra placed a hand on her shoulder, her expression softening. Yes, we made it. Dara turned to her, a shaky smile breaking across her face. What now? Now, Ilyra said, her voice filled with quiet determination. We start anew. Together. Dara reached for her, their fingers intertwining. Together. For the first time in weeks, the weight of their struggles lifted, replaced by the unshakable certainty that they had found something worth fighting for. Something worth risking everything for. As the stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility, Dara and Ilyra shared a quiet moment of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, their love stronger than any force that sought to tear them apart. The galaxy was vast and their future uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had each other, and that was enough.